Hi friends, and welcome back to Gardening Suburbia. My name is Amanda and I am a gardener here in Zone 6 in Ohio, and I want to talk to the first-time gardeners. I want to talk to those of you who are maybe on the fence about starting a garden, or maybe you are decided and you don't know where to start. I want to talk to you guys about how to get started, what are some of my biggest tips, as well as maybe what you need to be focusing on or maybe not focusing on. So first off, I think the biggest question that you need to ask yourself is, why are you starting a garden? Are you starting a garden for the joy of just being outside and getting some sunshine and perhaps just watching some plants grow? Or are you starting a garden to preserve that food? Or are you starting a flower garden so that you can enjoy those flowers inside on your table or in a windowsill, just to bring a little bit of beauty of the outside inside? For me personally, I am growing a garden for the beauty of flowers, as well as to grow a bunch of the food that I like to enjoy throughout the year. I do preserve a lot of what I grow outside, whether that is through pressure canning, or various other methods of preserving foods. So after you have decided why you are starting a garden, the next question you may have is, where do I get the plants? Do I need to start from seed? Can I just buy some plants from the local hardware store? And the question is whether or not you want to put the work into starting your plants from seed. I highly recommend starting your plants from seed because the varieties that are open to you, available to you from seed, are so much greater than those varieties that you can find from a box store. So your local box store is going to have varieties that are the most common. You're going to find that red Roma tomato, some big, Better Boy beefsteak tomatoes, your run-of-the-mill varieties of herbs, so rosemary, thyme, sage, dill. But what you're not going to find is mandarina lemon balm. You're not going to find that Black Beauty beefsteak tomato that is deeply purple and beautiful, as well as different varieties of carrots, onions, garlic. So it's really up to you on what you want to do. I personally think that once you get your setup, so whatever you're growing, your plant starts in, some lights, those are going to be the biggest upfront costs, the lights and the containers. But there are ways of getting around that, and maybe not spending so much on that first year. But once you have those things, you're paying anywhere from $2 to $5 for a packet of seeds. And some packets have so many seeds that it will last you more than the one season. So upfront costs can be a little bit bigger. In comparison, when you're buying plant starts from a box store, you may be getting one single plant for about $5. So you kind of have to do a little bit of math, figuring out what works best for you. Personally, I think buying seeds and starting them at home is going to give you so much more joy. You're going to actually get to see how those plants grow and how they thrive, and then eventually you get to plant them out into your own space. So the decision is yours. Ultimately, I think starting from seed just gives me a little bit more joy, and so maybe it would also give you more joy. After you've decided whether or not you're going to buy plant starts from your local hardware store, or you're going to start seeds at home. If you're starting seeds at home, there's going to be some equipment that you're going to need in order to do this. Now, there are cheaper ways of starting. There are more expensive ways of starting. Based on where you are and what you're wanting to purchase and how much you're willing to spend is going to kind of determine what you're going to start with, right? So my first year, I started with, I think they're like the Burpee plant starting seed trays. They're fairly inexpensive. I want to say they're about $20-ish for essentially, this is not a Burpee seed starting tray, but the 1020, which is like the standard sizing of these seed starting trays. Burpee's is a black, sorry, my cat is getting the plant from under the door. Burpee's is a black, I'm pretty sure. It's a thinner plastic, so it doesn't really last quite as long. I used them for as long as I could, and I think I got maybe 2 years out of them before they started breaking, and I was doubling them up to try to get more use out of them, longer use. So it's just basically a underwatering tray, and I used their peat moss or peat pellet seed starting trays, and you can pick a variety of sizes. Not Burpee, they were Jiffy. So Jiffy has these peat pot seed starting things. So this year I am selling plant starts. So this is one way I'm trying to be a little more environmentally friendly, is giving or selling my plant starts in a material that can be composted. So I bought these guys. These are a 3-inch seed starting pot, and they are said to compost in place pretty easily. Personally, I found that I need to kind of rip them apart a little bit to get them to compost, or I even peel them completely off and just throw them into a composting pile instead of planting my plant in the soil with this. But my first year, that's what I did. These are, I think, like $4 to $5 for 15 of them, maybe even cheaper than that. I can't recall. But if you're just starting out, these work perfect. Or if you want to go an even more inexpensive route, if you buy eggs, which I still do because I do not own chickens, not yet anyways, you can save your egg cartons. Egg cartons are a really awesome way of getting some seed starts started, as well as reusing something that otherwise could have been just tossed. So these are really awesome because they're much like the peat pots. They get really moist and can break down easily. I would recommend either peeling off any labels, anything that doesn't seem like it would actually compost, plasticky bits. These are like I don't know what type of material this is, but it's more of like a papery material. So these guys are pretty good for that. And you can kind of fit them in your trays nicely somehow. Something that can be bottom watered. Another option are the plastic egg containers, because this will give you a humidity dome built in. You can put your soil medium, whatever soil that you want to use, and then just close the lid and get a nice little humidity dome. And that's going to be great for when your seeds haven't sprouted yet. That humidity is going to keep the seedlings moist without them drying out, because seedlings drying out is what's going to potentially kill them and set you back. But I will go ahead and I will remove the label and start some seeds in this as well. So those are some really inexpensive options. You can also use, like, if you ever buy mushrooms from the grocery store and that come in that plastic container, those would be perfect. Just put some potting soil in there and start your seeds in that. You can also use solo cups. Solo cups are another great option. I have gotten solo cups to last, I think this will be my second season of using solo cups when I up pot, solely because if you start something too soon, it'll keep growing, and by a certain point, it's going to need up potted so that it has more nutrients available to it so that it can continue to grow healthily. So solo cups are a great option. I use these typically for either pepper plants or my tomato plants. And what I will do is directly label what variety on the outside of the cup. I will cut holes or drill holes into these to add some extra drainage so that these guys don't just get waterlogged. Another option of reusing is if you do buy or have bought plants in the past, if you keep your pot, these little cups that your plants come in, these need cleaned. Clean them so that you're not transferring any soil contaminants onto your plant starts, but getting these cleaned up, and you can reuse these. These are perfectly great. Plus, then they don't end up in the landfill having only been used once. So if you're wanting to spend just a little bit more money on your seed starting setup, I this year invested in some Burpee Super Seed pop-out silicone seed starting trays. I only got one. This is a 36 cell. This is perfect for your first starting of seeds. So when you first plant some seeds, if I'm going to go ahead and start some tomatoes or peppers, I will put one seed per cell. And then by the time that those get 2 to 3 sets of true leaves or are looking like they're a little bit too big for those little cells, I will go ahead and up pot them into something that is a little bit bigger so that they have more access to more nutrients. These guys, I think this tray was anywhere from like 12 to 15 bucks. I can't exactly remember. But it comes with the bottom tray for watering as well as the actual seed starting tray with these nifty little silicone bottoms that you can use to push your plant out without damaging the root system that it's grown. So the only thing that this does not come with is a humidity dome. That would be just like a plastic covering that keeps in the moisture so that your seeds don't dry out. Because if your seeds dry out, then it's more likely that those seeds will die because they need to stay moist until they germinate. So I think this is going to be fun to experiment with. And it's not too expensive to get started with. Plus, these should last quite a while. The next option is a little bit more expensive. This is one that I actually asked for as a Christmas gift 2 years ago, and it is the Bootstrap Farmer Seed Starting Trays. I got the bottom watering system, which you could also just fill with soil and plant directly onto this, or you can also purchase any of their seed starting cups. This is, I think, the 2.5-inch cups, as well as I have the 6 cell trays. These are really good for when you first start the seeds, and then you can up pot into a larger size. So these are really awesome because it makes it a little easier for bottom watering. Plus, these are a really nice hard plastic, thick plastic that lasts quite a while, which is good because that means I will get plenty of seasons of use out of these, especially if I go ahead and actually wash them, which these guys have not been washed. This was one of my goals this winter, was to get these washed, cleaned, and sterilized for this next season, but I didn't do that. But I will get to that. So these are awesome, really good, sustainable, long-lasting options. They're a little bit pricier, but the investment should last longer. There are some other options when it comes to seed starting. You can do soil blocking, which I will put an image up here of what a soil blocker looks like. A lot of people have been raving about the soil blocker. I have not yet purchased one just because I had invested in some Bootstrap Farmer trays. I'm using those, but soil blocking is another viable option if you're looking to use something that doesn't involve any plastics or whatnot, because it is a metal contraption that you put in your soil mixture and then you plant directly into those soil blocks. The biggest things to consider when starting seeds inside is your soil, the light or sunlight that you're going to be providing those seeds, as well as the watering situation. So we've covered the how you're going to be starting your seeds, what you're going to be starting them in. Seeds need an average of 12 to 16 hours of sunlight or LED or fluorescent light to get them to germinate and grow into healthy plants that we can plant into our gardens. For me, I have shop lights that I purchased from Home Depot. I think they're anywhere from $20 to $40, and I don't know if they're LED or fluorescent lights. Both are good options to be using. They don't have to be super expensive lights that you purchased off of Amazon. There are tons of options on there, so don't get too scared because you really don't need to buy the most expensive option. If you have the money available to you and you're wanting to invest in a really nice, greenhouse quality setup, more power to you. But you don't have to. There are some options on Amazon that have the full spectrum light or blue to red spectrum of light available to those plants. You really just want to find something that is either full spectrum, LED, or fluorescent. All of these options are going to be perfect for getting your plants to start to grow. I have 2 shop lights that I'm using. I will show them to you. My seed starting setup right now is very cluttered because I need to go ahead and actually go through I have a beautiful wire rack that I purchased with a gift card last winter. And it works beautifully. But you can also start your seeds in a windowsill. You can start them in a greenhouse if you're lucky enough to have one. I've not yet invested in a greenhouse, and I don't think I will at this property just because it is a rental. If you do have a greenhouse outside, you will not need seed starting lights because you will have the power of the sun outside to do that for you. So they need light for anywhere from 12 to 16 hours. Typically what I will do is I will turn my lights on when I wake up, and then when it is time to go to bed, I will turn those lights off. Seedlings need more access to sunlight than full sun, part shade plants, fully grown plants do once you actually go to transplant them outside. Full sun for fully grown plants is anywhere from 6 to 8 hours direct sunlight. Meanwhile, part sun to part shade is 3 to 6 hours of direct sunlight. So keep that in mind with the space that you have in either your yard, your balcony, whatever setup you have that you're going to be using for your seedlings once they are fully grown and ready to go outside. This year, I also am testing out a new grow light. This is actually something that I picked up from Target. It is the Back to the Roots LED grow lights. These are a full spectrum. So again, anywhere from that blue to red light, which let's see. So these are full spectrum light bulbs that can be put into any light that you already have at home. I think these were about $10 or so. And there are 2 lights in here. So this is a good, entry point for grow lights. When you are starting your seeds, you want your seedlings to be as close to the light, about 3 to 6 inches from that light source, so that they are not struggling to stretch towards that light. You want that light source to be fairly close to the soil, and as your plants grow, you will bring your light further and further back from those plants so that they don't get singed by the hot heat of those lights. So right now I have my seedlings. I have some onions that I started a few weeks ago up on my grow rack, and they are about 4 to 6 inches away from that light source, which is perfect because they are not stretching so much that they're getting leggy. And that means that those stems are getting really weak and spindly, but they're getting a really good direct light from my shop lights. When you guys go into your hardware store or your local Home Depot or Lowe's, you're going to find something that is labeled seed starting mix. And this is a really light, aerated, fluffy mixture of mostly peat moss, coco coir, and a few other things. And it is branded as what you need to use to start your seeds. I'm going to tell you personally, I do not use seed starting mix. I use potting mix. Potting mix has way more nutrients and it's going to last a lot longer for my seedlings than that seed starting mix. And this is because my potting mix has more nutrients in it. It's more nutrient dense. It's possible that it is going to have some mulch, which is okay. You can actually sift your soil so that you get the bigger pieces out. I typically will fill my pots straight out of the potting mix bag, and if I see any large chunks on the soil surface, I will just go ahead and pick those out. If I go ahead and plant my seed under that piece of mulch, it's very likely that that seed will not have enough energy to grow up and around that piece of mulch, because your seed only has enough energy to grow up through the soil surface and set its first set of cotyledal or first set of leaves, and then it'll start getting that sunlight, which will then photosynthesize into its next set of true leaves. So I like to use potting mix soil because I think it just works so much better, and it makes it so I do not have to up pot my plants as quickly as if I had used seed starting mix. Again, soil mixture is totally up to your discretion. You can pick anything from organic to non-organic. It is up to you on how you're going to grow your food. I, in years past, have dabbled in quite a few different mixtures. It is totally up to you what mixture you use. I am using Miracle-Gro potting mix this season, and it has a pretty good ratio of nitrogen, phosphate, and potash, which are the three main elements that your plants will need to grow. I'm not going to get into totally what those ingredients are and what they do for your plants, but they are some of the most common and most necessary for growing your plants. Just look for a good quality mix. It can be in any price range, but I would recommend getting a potty mix versus that seed starting mix. When you go to plant out your seeds in this mix, there are some important pieces of information that you need to keep in mind when you are planting. So seed size varies. So here I have some seeds that I saved from a fairy tale pumpkin. This is a beautiful pie pumpkin that I used for pumpkin pie this last season. These seeds, as you can tell, are quite large. As most pie seeds are. So these guys are much larger versus, say, some eggplant seeds. So if you guys can see this little guy, this is much smaller than my pumpkin seed. So when you go to plant these guys, you're going to be planting them at a slightly different depth. So the rule of thumb is twice as deep as they are wide. Most seed packets are going to say on their packaging what planting depth that you need to have them at. For this eggplant here, it says 1/4 of an inch. There are some seed packets there are some seeds that will need light to germinate. That means that you're going to surface sow. You're going to take, and typically those seeds are the seeds that are itty bitty. So that means just sprinkling them on the top of the soil surface and just letting them be. 1/4 inch of soil, I typically will take a pinch of soil and I will just lightly sprinkle it on top of my seeds, and that is perfectly fine. Now, if you're my sister, I asked my sister for some questions that she had when she was first starting her garden. Mind you, it has been a handful of years for her since she's first started gardening. And she typically is a very structured individual, but when it comes to gardening, she is loosey-goosey and she just, lives wild and free. So for when she was starting seeds, when she first started gardening, she didn't pay any attention to the seed packets and she just kind of planted things and she had success. So I'm going to put this out there. Seeds want to grow. The seeds aren't going to look at you and be like, hey, you didn't give me the right soil. You didn't give me the right kind of light. You didn't give me the right kind of water. Obviously, they need water, but they're not going to snuff their nose at you if you give them, mountain water, pH, filtered water, or tap water, or well water. It doesn't matter. Speaking of water, the next thing we need to cover is how to water your seedlings. Personally, for me, I love to bottom water my seedlings. Grab an example. So if we are looking at my seed starting tray, my bootstrap farmer tray, I have a tray that I like to use, and then I will put my pots into that tray. When I go to water, I notice that my soil is lighter in color, or maybe seems like it's a little bit too dry, or my seedlings look a little sad, which sometimes it happens. Sometimes you forget to water. Go ahead and water. They'll be okay. But I will take out a cup and I will fill about 1 inch of water into this tray. And then I will leave it to set. And my soil will soak all of that water up to the roots at the bottom of my plants. Okay? So instead of pouring my water directly onto the surface of my plants or seedlings, I'm going to put the water at the bottom. Now, this is helpful because if you top water your plants when there's still seeds, you're going to increase the likelihood of those seeds sinking to the bottom of your pots, where they're not going to have enough energy to put their sprouts up through all of that soil, which you're going to think is your fault. But it's really just the case that the seeds don't have that much energy to go all the way up, especially if they're supposed to be a quarter of an inch thick or planted at a quarter of an inch thickness. If they get pushed down to an inch, inch and a half, they're not going to have enough energy to get to that top of that soil. So bottom watering is my favorite way. This year I did invest in a spray bottle that mists. It's a very fine mist, so that fine mist is not going to cause those seedlings to settle deeper into the soil. But it does keep the soil surface nice and wet, because if your seedlings do get too dry, they can dry out and die, especially if they go too long without water, which means I am checking on my seedlings at least daily for the first few 1 to 2 weeks of their life to make sure that they are not drying out. If they start to get a little wilty, a little sad, and they start to flop over, just add some water. They'll perk right back up. I'd like to encourage you to go into your kitchen and find what recipes you are reaching for most often. Are you putting bell peppers and onions in almost every single dinner like I do? That's why I am growing an abundance of onions and bell peppers this year. Are you reaching for potatoes and garlic? Or perhaps you're a lover of hot sauces or salsas and you really want to grow some really hot peppers. I encourage you to find the things that you reach for most often and plant those. Plant the things that are going to bring you the most joy, that you know that you're going to utilize. And those are the ones that are going to make you feel more inclined to go out into your garden, to inspect, to look at, to enjoy and love on. Perhaps you're actually wanting to start a cut flower garden, and bring some beauty from outside inside and put it in a windowsill, on a table, on your counter, in a bathroom, whatever you like. Find some beautiful varieties of flowers that bring you joy. I really want to help you guys succeed in growing your first garden. So if you want to watch me geek out on some of my favorite varieties that I purchased this year that I'll be growing this year, I will pop my seed haul video up here for you to enjoy until my next upload. But until then, guys, thank you so much for joining me, and happy gardening.